So this time, I'm going to remember to introduce us, is the trick, right?
Based.
So my name is Elijah Samuelson.
And I'm Spencer Cook.
And we're back with another episode of EDHTakes. And this time, we're not just going to talk about Magic cards. We're going to talk about Magic players. The other most important part of the game. And some things that they do that might come across as harmful. And we're going to talk about ways to kind of reevaluate your behavior and hopefully help people have a better time in Commander.
Yeah, help you have a better time and help your opponents have a better time, for sure.
So politics is obviously a very important part of the Commander format, given that it's a 4-player, more social format, and there's a lot of negotiation and interplay between opponents. However, we've seen this cause a lot of hostility, personally with us, and just like you'll see comments and stuff on like the EDH subreddits, or people complaining about bad threat assessment, or being attacked too often. And oftentimes the stance that people take when they're saying stuff like this is that people are playing suboptimally or incorrectly. And I think it's better to help newer players, especially.
Instead of just, yeah.
Remember that especially in multiplayer EDH, there's a lot of decision points to make. And nobody's necessarily wrong for playing the way that they want to play.
Yeah, and it's a really hard format, so, I mean, when you add in politics and, like, threat assessment stuff, like, it gets even more complicated, so at least just try to be a little bit more understanding of other players, I suppose, is what I'm trying to get at. But, so I just want to say, to start off, we might be giving the impression that politics is bad. That's not the impression that we want to give. Obviously, politics isn't, all bad or all good. There's, the pros and cons to that, but... to start off, I think we're going to talk about, what kinds of politics there are.
Yeah, like what exactly is politics? Because I think people might have the idea that politics is just necessarily deal-making or bargaining with people. But there's a lot of little nuance to that, and there's a lot of different ways that you can politic in a game.
Yeah, and the most obvious form, just to start off, is that blatant politics of making deals with people, specifically going out and offering to somebody, hey, let's, don't kill my thing, I won't attack you type thing. Or do this for me and I'll do this for you. Everybody knows about this, and even because this is, like, one of the main, like, entry points into the format is watching, like, YouTube videos, like Commander gameplay, like, game nights.
Yeah, stuff like game nights.
And, everyone else, that does videos, and it's not just game nights, but, like, they've normalized politics, not just them, like everyone like does politics, not just YouTube, but like so it's very expected that there's going to be politics at a table, at any given random table.
Yeah, and it's very appealing to think that you can have this extra resource in a game of like, I don't have the ability to do this thing right now, so if I do this for you, you do this thing for me, and it feels good to make deals like that. And it can be a lot of fun sometimes. But at the same time, it can also be kind of disadvantageous if you're doing this constantly. It can kind of wear on people a little bit, or you can maybe get in the position where you make too many deals, and then
you can't uphold all of them or something.
You need to remember that your opponents are your opponents at a certain point.
Yeah, you don't want to like pigeonhole yourself into never winning the game or something, right?
Yeah. So that's something to keep in mind with deal making. And kind of similarly to deal making, you have just like a straight up threat, like threatening people within a game of Commander.
And yeah, not necessarily, just I want to jump in for a second, not necessarily like you're being like rude inherently to the threat, but just like, if you kill my guy, I'll attack you or get you back or whatever. Like, it's not always like with bad intent. It's just like, a threat in the game, not like you're threatening their life or something.
Yeah, it seems pretty similar to deal making, but a threat is specifically more so a negative thing.
Yeah.
Like, I am going to do this to you if you do this to me.
Yeah.
It's not really like an exchange, like a positive exchange so much.
Yeah, and so the thing with threats is threats are kind of, they can work sometimes. Like, they're definitely on the table. I wouldn't say, like, you can't make threats like it's bad form to do so. But the thing is, with threats, you're going to kind of open the door for someone to just, like, go ballistic on you. Not like yell at you or anything, but I mean, like, if you're opening the door for threats, you know, they might just decide, nope, I'm not buckling to your threat, now you're my enemy. And then it can just kind of, like, progress into, like, a nuclear war situation. And I think you're at fault if you're the one who... You can't really be mad at that if you're the one that brought up the threat.
Yeah, if you threaten somebody, you really need to be able to back that up and really be able to enter that conflict and stick with it if you're the aggressor there. Because I think people often do a threat in the form of... they're doing it to protect themselves, but really it's an aggressive tactic.
Yeah, and it can be useful. It's just like, you know... Get ready, like, you should be prepared that if you threaten someone, the rest of the table could be like, I don't like that you're threatening him, let's all, like, gang up on you or something. Like, that could happen, and that could be a potential downside of making a threat.
Yeah, because especially with stuff like single target spot removal, most people that are making threats need to understand it's not great for you to have to spend that out at a time that you don't want to. So if you're threatening somebody, you're doing that because you want to not have to use that card. But most people, especially stronger players, will understand that they should call your bluff and make good on your threat.
Yeah, unless you have some, like, tricksy way of, like, getting around something, I think a lot of times you're going to find yourself feeling pretty good about calling a threat and being like, nope, use it. You got to do it if you got to do it. Mm-hmm. That's what I like to do, at least. But
yeah, force people into interacting when they might necessarily not want to.
Yeah. And sometimes you can get more out of it, like, buckling to a threat as well. Like, if you have, like, something like if the thing that they're threatening is, like, actually really important to you and, like, they don't even know it's that important to you, like, you could also just, like, oh, sure, whatever, you know, I won't do that.
Yeah, so it's got some value, but be very careful about using threats. And that leads into our next idea here is it's not necessarily like a form of politics. It can be. But if you're doing it specifically for the use of politics, you might be a little bit of a sociopath.
A little bit.
But just being nice to people within a game, I think, can make a huge impact on the overall enjoyment of a game of Commander.
Yeah. Like, you know, if you're like, and this doesn't mean like not killing their stuff or not attacking them, but just being, like, a pleasant person to be around, being respectful to their wishes and their decisions. Like, you can... Like, don't disparage their, like, card choices or something, right? Like, and the effect of this can be maybe they treat you a little bit nicer, like, in the game. You shouldn't do it with that goal in mind, but that could be a good side effect.
Yeah, and it doesn't mean, like, you have to avoid interacting with that person within the game or avoid attacking them. Like, you're all playing Game of Commander, obviously. You're all opponents. You're supposed to still interact with them, but you can do so in a respectful way. And maybe when you go and remove something, don't like be rude about it. Or don't condescend to them. Like, don't take, like, glee in fucking somebody over in a game.
Don't be like, haha, yeah, you shouldn't have done that, loser. Like, come on. You can be a little more tactful than that.
Don't push up your glasses as you go to counter their spell. Just do what you got to do.
I suppose I should say you can do these things, but just expect to get dealt with, right? Like, because if you're, like, gonna, like, be rude about something when you remove someone, well, they're gonna like, you know, they're gonna try to, like, mess with you in some way, like, because, like, you're being a dick to them. Like, oh, now I'm gonna counter your spell because, like, why would you be so mean to me or something?
Yeah,
right?
If you're rude or condescending to somebody, they don't want to see you win that game.
Yeah, they want you to lose.
They want to see you lose. So if it gets down to that point where it's, say, 3 of you and you're playing with that new player, it's you and somebody who is super condescending or rude to them, they're probably going to give you the out more often than not because they want to see the other person lose.
Yeah. Yeah, so try to be, just try to be genuine. Don't, like, be nice, like we said before. Don't be nice just to, like, try to get people to be nicer to you in game. Like, be a good person, and you should, like, you should probably be okay.
Yeah, because if you're nice to somebody throughout an entire game, and it gets to later in the game, and they make that decision to do something that's harmful to you and maybe makes it so you don't win the game, and maybe that more rude person does win the game, don't then be like, oh, what the hell? I was so nice to them. They should be nice to me back and let me win this game of Commander. That's
No, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah, it shouldn't work like that, and you shouldn't expect that.
And one last thing about this being nice people, like, form of politics, is, like, you really, like, one thing that I like to do when I play Commander a lot is I really like to acknowledge my opponent's agency in the game. So, like, if my opponent makes a decision or something that I don't agree with or whatever, I won't, like, shame them or tell them that, like, I would have done something different or whatever. I think that kind of takes away from your opponent's agency. So, like, they can feel like if they do something, they might feel like if they do something that you don't like, that you might, like, blow up at them or something, and then, like, they feel like they can't do that because they'll face, like, out-of-game repercussions, and that kind of sucks.
Yeah, exactly.
So our next, category of politics that we have is strong communication / establishing intent. And this is more of, like, I'd like to describe this as deal-making, but, like, not trying to get something yourself out of it. Deal-making, but, like a collaborative deal-making.
Yeah, you're not really, like, asking a favor of somebody necessarily. You're just asking them to clarify what they're intending on doing on their turn.
Yeah, so you guys, especially, this is especially important when there's, like, some sort of arch enemy on the table or something, and then, like, so if there's someone that's, like, really strong, you can be like, oh, hey, guy that's going after me, are you going to board wipe on your turn? Because if you, like, we need to board to deal with this guy, but, like, if you board wipe, I might be able to leave, like, up a counterspell to deal with, like, something that they have to rebuild. So maybe that's something we can do together to deal with this guy. So, yeah, I don't know.
And it doesn't always necessarily have to be in the form of two players collaborating against another player. You could even take the position of somebody has, like, a Sun Titan or something with an attack trigger, and you have a removal spell for it. They go to their turn to attack, and you don't want to take 6 damage. So instead of just killing it before they go to attacks, you could say, well, who are you going to attack with this? And it seems kind of similar to a threat, but I feel like it's a little bit different because you just don't want to have to take 6 damage if you don't want to. So you want them to be able to use their value pieces and, like, get enjoyment out of the game. So if you just clarify what they're going to do with that, I think that can be useful.
Yeah, and even they may not like the best case scenario for both of you guys, you and the player that has the Sun Titan, is that they weren't even planning on attacking you anyway, and they just let you know. Like, I think one thing with declaring intent, establishing intent, is if you're the player that, like, is going to do something, you can actually just, like, you can just, like, give out free information to your opponents. I tend to like to keep my information to myself. But, like, if you want to just tell your opponents, like, hey, on my turn, I'm gonna attack this other guy, so, just so you know, like, I will get my trigger, but, like, I'm not gonna attack you, so you don't have to use something on it. Like, you can do that if you want to.
Yeah,
and that's
exactly.
The way you can...
Like, if I knew that somebody was kind of dead on board to, like, the collective board states of all 3 of their opponents, and they were likely to play a board wipe on their turn, I could just say, I am definitely going to attack other player other than you. So that
if you want a board wipe or something on your turn.
So yeah, if they were going to board wipe, if they thought they needed to or they die, they might not do it because they think if I'm attacking another player, they're not going to die and they don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, and it may be better just to make them to make them do it, but, like, this is the way you can do politics that is pretty respectful, I think, of other players. And it often doesn't even like, one of the problems with politics is it slows the game down. This probably doesn't slow the game down as much because you're not, like, arguing with someone about whether they're going to take a deal or not. You're just telling them what you're going to do.
Yeah, just being honest about your intentions.
Yep.
I think honesty is the best policy.
For sure, especially in Commander. When, I think everyone can... maybe I'm wrong here, but I think, players, if they make deals, they almost always uphold them. Like, people don't go back on deals in Commander, I don't think, because usually, like, people you don't play with them, right? Like,
if they do, you never make a deal with them again.
Yeah, so I think you can trust people's deals in Commander. Well, at least trust them, like, what they say. You can't trust that their intentions are good because they might have some like ulterior motive or something behind a deal. But you can trust that what they're saying is honest. So you'll get, like, those deals that are like, I promise I will not cast a spell during your upkeep of your turn. And it's like, I wonder if there's something going on there. I believe you, but whatever. That's rambling a bit.
I think I played a game recently where one of my opponents was asking if I was gonna attack him or hurt him in some way, and I said, I was playing my Queen Marchesa Near Death Experience deck, and I said, you know what, Thomas, I won't attack you the entire game. That's a pretty good deal to make. I think most people take that deal, but I was playing a deck that does not need to attack the entire game.
Yeah.
So that's if somebody makes a deal like that with you, you can know that they're probably up to no good.
They're probably full of something, yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, moving on from now that we've talked about the types of politicking, we should probably talk about, some of the pros and cons, because, we like politicking. Politicking's great, but it's a little bit of a two-edged sword, because, for me at least, because some of the most fun situations and some of the most unfun situations I've ever had in Commander have been, off the back of politics happening. So you got to be careful with how you use politics and know what you're doing, how it can affect the table.
Exactly. It can be very stressful for you and your opponents to constantly have to justify their decisions based on table politics.
Mm-hmm. So one of the really cool things about politics that it can do for a table is politics can make some of the coolest moments at a table. Like when you combine, your fog with someone else's really cool effect, and you're able to kind of claw back in a game or do some epic synergy combo between two players. That can be really awesome, and it requires politics. It requires you two agreeing to do something together, and those always can be fun.
Yeah, or even it's not the greatest thing to do, but doing the little kind of trickery, verbal tricks with people to kind of influence their decisions can be fun for some people. I mean, you shouldn't do it to such an extreme level that you're actively trying to manipulate people all the time.
Yeah.
But just putting ideas in people's head, being like, oh man, somebody should really board wipe right now, or reacting negatively to somebody else's threat and stuff like that. I think that can be a little bit fun.
Yeah, as long as you're not going too far with it, to the point where it, like I said before, the part where it takes agency away from other players. You want to do it in a way where they don't feel bad.
Yeah, exactly. If you want somebody to do something, you should try and make it their idea if you want it to happen, instead of being like, hey, you should do that right now, please.
Yeah.
If you don't do it, you're wrong.
You have to make them come to that conclusion, or at least some part on their own, so that I don't think you should try to make people do something that actively hurts them. You should make them do it because they think it helps them.
Yeah, help people come to a
beneficial
to a good conclusion.
Yeah.
If they need help assessing a threat, I think.
So, on that level, politics can be kind of unfun when they're used to kind of bully players. So for example, if you take threats too far, it can be really unfortunate for the player getting threatened, because they just feel like they can end up feeling like they're just being hated on for whatever reason. Or if you're if you're the kind of person that whenever someone does something to you, you're like, why you do that to me? You're a really dumb person or something. Why it can make it really unfun for other players. I don't like that aspect of politics, and I think if that's what you do, you need to kind of take a look at how you're affecting other players.
Yeah, and so in general, politics can also, too much of it can really slow down a game. If you're constantly every turn going to each of your opponents and trying to make some kind of deal with them.
Yeah. One thing I don't like about politics is when someone plays a removal spell on your thing, when you go, wait, hold up. If you don't do that, this can happen. And it's just they played their spell. You don't want to, you don't try to convince people not to play a spell every time they cast a spell when it affects you. It just wastes time, and it's also you put that person in a really weird position, because they have to either buckle to your demands, or they have to just be they have to kind of be stern, and it can be kind of hard to be stern sometimes.
Yeah, some people really don't like being forced into extra confrontation and conflict. Like we've said, you're already opponents, so you don't want to create extra conflict where you don't have to, I feel like.
Yeah, and a lot of Magic play, not trying to put anyone down. I especially was very socially awkward when I started playing at my local game store before I knew anyone, but a lot of Magic players are a little bit uncomfortable in some social situations. So it can be hard if someone's being really mean to you and you do something, and you can just be okay, I guess whatever, it's fine. You don't want to put someone in that situation.
Yeah, people want other people to like them, and so it's easy to fold to situations like that and just go along with what people are telling you to do.
Yeah. And don't be afraid if you find yourself you're being a little bit, you find that's happening a lot. Don't be afraid to just maybe wait till the game's over and just try to have a conversation with someone. Hey, I don't like that you do this to me whenever I try to do something that affects you. Maybe we can dial back the politics a little bit, or even just you could take a break maybe, and come back in a couple days and play with them again later.
And if you're playing with people especially new people, and you see somebody talking down to or demeaning somebody based on how they're playing, like, absolutely stand up for that person.
Yeah.
And just, like, take their side with it, because that's a hard position to be in, and we're all trying to have fun when playing this game.
Yeah, one of the other good things, though, that politics can do is politics can do a good job at, like, kind of evening the playing field at a table. So if there's, like, a deck that either is, like, better than the other decks, or it just got to a fast start, usually there's a game where someone's ahead, I would say, most Commander games, you can kind of use politics to, maybe even the playing field a little bit. Oh, maybe I won't hurt your stuff because we need to kind of get up to the level of this guy or something like that, right? Or bring him down a peg.
Yeah, I think oftentimes the argument for why certain powerful cards are allowed in the format, such as like Soul Ring and Mana Crypt, is because it is a multiplayer format, and people like to think that the multiplayer aspect will self-correct a power disparity early in the game. And
it does that some kind of.
Sometimes that can be the case. Like if I'm playing, I've got a couple decks that can have like really strong starts, especially off the back of a turn 1 Soul Ring, but not so strong that if all 3 players decided to target me after that, I could stand up to it and win the game through that.
Yeah, so that's one of the ways that politics definitely is like a welcoming to the format, at least.
Yeah, I actually used to play at a local game store in Alexandria, Minnesota, where there was a player who started bringing like borderline or like actually fully tuned competitive EDH decks to the regular Commander pods. And so what people started doing was just overloading their decks on spot removal and counter spells, because 3 players with a lot of efficient spot removal and counter spells can oftentimes shut down even a competitive EDH deck.
Definitely.
In the early game if they all work together.
Yeah. Like almost certainly, I would say, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like if 3 players decide, they can probably stop even like the most powerful decks in the game. If 3 players decide to team up against them from turn 1, like forever, like you'll probably be able to stop that person.
Yeah, so you do have some power to fight back against stronger decks through the use of politics.
And if you feel like you're getting targeted out of you see all those posts on Reddit of people talking about how like, oh, I'm maybe what's wrong? Is my playgroup wrong? Am I wrong? I feel like I'm getting targeted all the time. Your playgroup could be wrong. You could be wrong, but just realize that some of the fact that you're getting targeted is probably because it's this politics dealing with you being a little bit better at the game or having a better deck. So just be a little bit understanding of that.
Yeah, and personally, I've been in games.
It's a little bit flattering, right?
Yeah, where I'm the arch enemy or people are trying to take me down, and it can be frustrating sometimes, especially if you don't feel that you're deserving of the hate. But I've been in the situation where I can tell, like, I'm currently winning the game, like King of the Hill, and people fire everything they got at me to take me down. It can be, I find that kind of fun sometimes, and yeah, like you said, flattering a little bit. Like it's. Yeah. And everyone can be in that position sometimes where they get to be the arch enemy.
Yeah. And piggybacking off of this concept a little bit, I want to talk about how when you're using politics and trying to make deals with people, be aware of your position in the game. So, like, if you are the player that is clearly, like, the arch enemy in a game, and you, like, start trying to make deals with people, it can come off as really disrespectful to other players, I think. Like, if you're, like, try to be tactful. Like, if you're, like, way ahead of everyone and you're like, hey, I won't mess with you if you, like, screw this other player that's, like, also behind. It's like, no, bro, like, I'm not just going to let you, like, continue to win even more. It can almost be, like a little bit dehumanizing. It can make, like, I don't know, that's a little bit loaded, but you know what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah, like we said, politics can be kind of an equalizing tool within the game because everyone, in theory, has the same access to it. I mean, some people might not be as socially adept as others and, like, as good at using politics, but just because you're maybe better at using politics doesn't mean that you should break it out, especially when you're winning those games, because it's like...
It's a little insulting.
If you were drowning and, like, you had, like, everyone got a life preserver and then you also took one when you were, like, on a boat or something. I don't know.
You're like, I also have an equal right to this life preserver when I'm not in the water or something.
Yeah.
It's a little weird.
Yeah, I don't think that's a thing that you should need to capitalize on if you're already the stronger player or you have the stronger deck.
Yeah, and also if you are one thing, if you're like, especially if you're like the archenemy, try to empathize with your opponents and don't get mad at them if they decline to make a deal with you if you're like in the lead or something. Because like, they probably shouldn't be making deals with you if you're in the lead. My opinion here.
Yeah, I think empathy is key. Try and put yourself in other people's position.
Yeah,
if you can.
And that moves right into our next topic, which is about threat assessment. So, threat assessment is something that I am very passionate about in Commander because I think that a lot of problems in Commander come from people critiquing other people's threat assessment. And the reason that I take issue with this is because I think we all agree that Commander is a pretty hard format to play, right? Like, it's not easy. There's a lot of things to think about. This might be a really hot take. Like, this is our EDHTakes hot take of the episode from me. I don't necessarily attribute this to what Eli thinks, but I think that threat assessment in Commander is full stop the hardest, or at least the most complicated thing in all of Magic, every format, Commander, Modern, Limited, Standard, everything. I think threat assessment in Commander might be one of the most complicated aspects of Magic in its entirety.
When you said that the first time, I was trying to think of other parts of the game that might be as hard or harder. I was like, mulliganing is kind of hard sometimes. I don't find deck building to be that hard.
Yeah.
Gameplay is, I don't know, there's decision points in a 1v1 game, but it's mostly pretty straightforward, especially because you know who your enemy is at any given point all the time. But yeah, Commander threat assessment, there's so many moving parts to that.
You have to like, here's just a couple of the many things you have to consider for threat assessment. You have to consider the board state. You have to consider your deck. You have to consider your hand. You have to consider every one of your opponent's deck. You have to consider politics. You have to consider the social contract. You have to consider how your opponents are going to feel if you do something. You have to consider out-of-game things like that. In 1v1 formats, you don't even have to consider how your opponent feels for the most part. Because like in Commander, the social aspect makes it even more difficult. So the fact that it's so complex is why I get a little bit frustrated when other people try to simplify threat assessment down to just like, oh, you're dumb, you're wrong, I would have done that, you're wrong. Especially if they don't even like have all the information that I have. Like, I know my deck, I know the cards in my hand, I'm thinking about things in my deck and what I'm doing. I also make mistakes sometimes, but like, who are you to tell me that you know the hidden information that is my hand and my deck better than I do? Like, cut me a break. Like, Jesus.
Yeah, people get really fired up about a lot of if this and like the hidden information and like there's so much like uncertainty in Commander. Like,
yeah.
Oh, if this had happened, then this would have happened, and if this, then that, and you just can't know everything. And there's been plenty of games where I will actually make what I believe in the moment to be a mistake. Like, I'll forget to play out a creature or play like completely on curve. And then something will happen that I didn't know was going to happen. And I'll be like, oh, well, guess it's good I didn't do that.
Yeah. And one thing that is really like frustrating as well for me is that like there's so much to consider for every decision you make in Commander because there's like a lot of cards and stuff. Like, I could make a decision for a reason that is completely foreign to my opponents, and they don't even have like the even beginning to consider the reason that I make a decision. But they might still make comments about my decision telling me that I was wrong about it. Like, I don't know. It's a little bit frustrating when people try to tell you what you did was wrong or right. Like, obviously sometimes like there's simple things which can be wrong or right. But like, oh, you missed some damage because you forgot to like tap your thing before attacking or whatever. But like, yeah, it's just so complex that I think you should really try to be careful when you try to tell their players how they should assess threats.
Yeah, you've got 3 opponents to deal with in every game of Commander, and you don't know what's in their hand, you don't know what they're thinking,
yeah,
you don't know what they're going to do. Sometimes, if you know them well enough, you might know the cards in their deck.
Yeah.
But especially if you're playing with new players or people you've never met before, you don't even know what kind of decks they're playing, like what the power level is or what cards they're playing in their decks.
Yeah. And that's not to say that you can't like make suggestions or say like, oh, that seems like a threat at the table. That's okay. Just like, don't act like your like idea is like strictly better or somehow superior to someone else's. It's pretty annoying. But also another thing is people, even if someone does make a move which is like, even if they like their thought process was flawed or they made a mistake, people make mistakes in Commander a lot, and that's okay. You don't need to rub salt in the wound if someone makes a mistake.
Yeah, Commander's supposed to be the fun format, so I would hope that everyone could be relaxed enough and kind of laid back to the point where they don't have to hyper-analyze every decision they're making and every play they're making to the point where you should afford to yourself a couple mistakes in a game of Commander, I think.
Yeah, and I think people usually realize when they make mistakes, they don't need to be told they made a mistake.
Yeah, don't rub it in with somebody. If they make a misplay or a mistake, and they probably realize that they did. I mean, there might be some cases if they're a newer player or they're just kind of out of it where they didn't realize what they did. But for the most part, if somebody makes a mistake, they probably feel bad about it enough already.
Yeah, and it's not like black and white. You can definitely still like say, oh hey, could this have been better maybe? Like, and that's fine. You just have to approach it in a respectful way. That's the big takeaway, is just be respectful.
Yeah, I think we both enjoy, like, after a game, if we had a big decision point in the game, like kind of discussing it with the table and being like, what would you guys have done here?
Yeah, this
and,
was
like,
my
seeing what, because I think it helps you to approach it like that, helps you improve your gameplay a little bit and like kind of understand other people's perspectives a little bit better, but not in you shouldn't do it in the way of like, oh, this was objectively right or this would have been wrong, because sometimes you can just never know.
Yeah, and I think it's fun to explain your thought process sometimes to people, and they might disagree with it, but like, it's different. Also, one other thing is that you shouldn't assume someone misplayed just because you would have acted differently. Like something might appear like a misplay to you, but with the information they have, it actually wasn't a misplay, or maybe it was a misplay. But you shouldn't oh, you misplayed, the idiot, or something. Yeah, it's dumb. I kind of harping on this point a little too much. Maybe we should move on a little bit.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Also, yeah, go ahead.
Especially that being said, when there's newer or inexperienced players, you should do what you can to help them out with threat assessment. But that includes pointing out when you yourself are the threat. I think there's players that might do this thing with new players where they try and point them at their opponents.
Yeah.
Like you act like, hey, I'll be your friend. I'm your buddy. We should deal with that over there.
That's
we should get that.
threatening.
Like be like, we're on a team, you and me. And you can still be nice to them and help them with the game, but you should allow them to assess you as a threat too. And when they turn on you in a moment, you shouldn't be like, whoa, what's that over there?
I think you should, especially with new players, you should be honest about when you or yourself are threatening. So, do you want to win that badly that you're going to undersell the power of your board to someone that doesn't even have the experience to know better? Like, I think that's a pretty shitty thing to do. And it's kind of just taking advantage of someone that's new to the format. I think you definitely want to, even if you're not the most threatening player, sometimes I do this, I'll be like, hey, you could kill that or that. My thing's also kind of scary too. So if you kill that, I won't be upset or anything. I think doing something like that is pretty good.
Yeah, I think especially explaining the reasoning for why they might want to act a certain way or interact with a certain piece. Like if I was playing with a new player and I had a scary thing out and my opponents each had a scary thing out, I would be like, well, this is good in my deck because of this and that.
Yeah, it might be a combo piece on your board or something.
And say if it was a combo piece, obviously I wouldn't say oh, I have the other piece of this combo in my hand, so you should definitely kill that. I'd be like, well, I could do this. And same with my opponents. So, well, they play this in their deck, so that's what this is going to do.
Yeah.
And just letting them decide based on their personal experience or their feelings what they want to deal with.
Yeah, and ultimately you have to realize that you can tell them whatever you want. You can tell them how things are. You can describe the power level of things, but ultimately it's not your choice. It's their choice, and you shouldn't berate them for a choice they make.
Yeah, do you really want to play the kind of commander where you're playing somebody else's deck for them? I don't enjoy that.
Oh, now this isn't like a slight at anybody, but sometimes someone will die in a game of Commander and then they'll help another player out, like someone's been knocked out and they're like, oh, let me see what's in your hand, and they start telling them what to do or whatever. That can be okay, I guess, but it feels a little weird when it's oh, I guess I'm playing against both of you now. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. If somebody asks you for help,
that's fine. Yeah,
that's different and fine. But don't backseat drive people's decisions so much.
Oh, that being said, sorry, this is a little bit unrelated, but something that I do like doing, at least in my games of Commander, is if someone's got a really complex board or a combo or something, and they're like, hey, I've got this. Can you guys help me figure out how to do it? That's something I really like. So, like, if someone's, like, trying to attack and trying to count up the damage or something, you can be like, oh, hey, you can do this in addition to get a couple more damage or whatever, as long as I'm not doing it with, like, an intent to screw them over later or something.
Yeah, that kind of goes along with the communication bit of politics that we were talking about, and how just kind of opening a dialogue with the other players within the game can help you produce more positive experiences.
Or even if like an opponent is like comboing off or something, you might be like, oh, hey, you're comboing off, but if you do it in this way, this guy's onboard bounce spell won't own you. Like, I mean, you can either not tell them that or tell them that. I think both of them is okay.
Yeah, like that. I prefer to not try and eke out small advantage through my opponent's misunderstanding things or misplaying. Like, if somebody's going to do something that's clearly a mistake,
I would point it out to them and be like, hey,
I would often prefer for them to do things in the most advantageous way to themselves possible, so that I don't feel like if I win that game, it's not because my opponent's made a bunch of mistakes, it's because I had some skill or I did the right thing.
Yeah, like if I'm gonna like combo off and someone's like, in response to you comboing off, I'm gonna like use my removal spell at like a bad time, I might be like, oh, hold on a second. Would you like to do that like in my upkeep when I can't actually combo off? Because that'd be probably better for you. And it's like, oh yeah, I didn't know that was how that worked. Sure, I'll do it then.
Yeah, because Magic players, especially Commander players, aren't necessarily like playing competitively. They don't know the right plays and when to make them all the time.
And they're also not laser focused onto the game 24/7. Sometimes you got to check a text message you got from your mom. Sometimes you're having some table talk with the friends and you're just kind of bantering. I think it's a lot more enjoyable if you be like nice to people. Like, don't let them take back their whole turn, but you know what I mean. Like, at least, be a little bit courteous.
Yeah, I like to cut people some slack and be able to have that banter and just feel relaxed a little bit, because then if we're relaxed and having a good time and I go to do something that's incorrect or somebody makes a misplay and then they get kind of like ridiculed for it or like get dicked because of it, all of a sudden, whoever that happened to feels terrible.
Yeah.
And it's going to put a damper on the whole like experience, I think.
Yeah, and you don't want to disincentivize people from like joking around and having a good time with you, because if you get owned because you're like chatting with the table, well, what's the solution to that? You don't chat with the table.
Yeah,
and
the
then everyone
solution
has less fun.
is like me when I would go to my Commander League in Alexandria
A couple years ago, right?
And it wasn't necessarily that it was for prizes, but there were 2 pods per night, and they were you would track the winners, and the winners would put their names into an entry for a booster box or some kind of prize at the end of the night or at the end of the month. So there was some incentive to win. More so, my incentive to win the first pod of the night was you got to play in what they called the winners pod, and that was mostly where a lot of like my friends would end up playing, or like the people that I wanted to play with. Mm-hmm. So I would go kind of hard on the first game. But when I was playing there, I would just go super hard and like avoid like having any kind of
fun,
good time or like goofing around, because I just wanted to win. And that led to some really toxic experiences on my part, and I would get very upset if I ever made any kind of mistake. I would sometimes count the amount of mistakes I made that night and be like, oh my god, I can't believe I made that one big mistake tonight. And that's just such a shitty thing to think. Like, you should be allowed to make some mistakes.
Especially for Commander. I can understand that if you're like grinding to get into like a PTQ or something for like standard or limited or something, you'd be a little hard on yourself. But I don't know, Commander, especially if you're not playing like a competitive format or competitive EDH or whatever, like you should cut yourself some slack and try to enjoy it a little more, I think. I mean, not saying that's how you should play, but like that's how I prefer to play.
Exactly.
Yeah, so that we went off on some other things there at the end that weren't directly related, but I think that's about what we had to talk about. To just recap a little bit, to put a kind of a cap in everything, to put a bow on the top, to put a bun in the oven. That's not quite the right thing, but just be nice to people and try to realize what you're doing and how it affects other players at the table. I think you go a long way just taking a second and thinking about, is what I'm doing, could this frustrate people or could this make people have a worse time? And then reflecting on that.
Yeah, and if you've had experiences with politics where you have been toxic to people or you've noticed people being toxic to other people,
just try to change.
Maybe just try and take a break from politics too. Like, just play the game and do what you've got to do and avoid trying to make deals with people, and just keep that mentality of, yeah, we're all opponents here.
Yep.
Ultimately, like, we're all just trying to win, and when somebody does something you have to assume they know what's best for them.
Mm-hmm. And if you've made mistakes in the past and been like a person that you don't want to be in the future, I don't think anyone should criticize you for your past. I think they should try to help you be a better person in the future. So don't feel too bad if you were like me in the past, or if you were like a bad, kind of rude to people. Just try to be better in the future. Maybe apologize to people that you were rude to, and hope to move forward from that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's probably about all we got, right?
Yeah, so this was our... we've got a lot more to say about this, I think, but we just kind of summarized the main points that we wanted to bring up, because we've had a lot of discussions and debates about threat assessment and like play styles
in our own play groups and stuff. Yeah,
and
it's a hot topic for us right now.
Yeah, it's sometimes come across as like a little bit toxic and like stressful. So we just wanted to kind of do a little vent session about this.
Don't be afraid to take a break from a play group or from whatever for a week or something if you feel like you're not in a good mental state. I think just stepping out from a game, maybe taking a break from a game, can do a lot for your mental.
Yeah. Yep. So yeah, just take care of yourself like that. And so yeah, I've been Elijah Samuelson.
Yeah, and I'm Spencer Cook. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Yeah, give us a like or dislike.
Yeah,
no, probably not that.
Yeah, that's fine.
But yeah, subscribe to our YouTube channel. We have a Twitter at EDHTakes.
Yeah,
it's all one word.
Trying to figure out more things to post on there, but trying to sometimes engage with other personalities. Maybe post some fun polls and stuff. Could be a cool way to engage with you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to leave it in the YouTube comments or something.
Yeah, and actually, suggestions for topics too.
We have a lot of ideas, but we don't know which ones to do next. So
yeah, so anything that anyone specifically wants to hear something about, would be super awesome. And thank you for listening.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.